أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم. Praise to Allah, the Almighty, who grants us these opportunities where we are able to hold these gatherings and commemorate and glorify our gatherings with the remembrance, the holy word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the remembrance of the Prophet and his Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Today we will be commemorating the death anniversary of our respected, the mother of loyalty, al-Wafa, al-Baneen alayha salatu wassalam. And we convey our condolences to the Prophet and his household and lovers of Ahlul Bayt across the world on this occasion. Also, as mentioned in the email, we'll be dedicating the reward, the Thawab, to Marhoom, Mukhtar, Hudda. And today the majlis will be dedicated to his soul, and we'll have our respected Shaykh Shafiq who will be addressing today's majlis. In order to start this majlis, I'll request my dear young brother Asad Ali to start with the recitation of the Holy Quran. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Okay, so Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Inna Hatinaka Kawthar Fasalli Arabika Wanhar Inna Shanika Wabtar.
Ahsantum. Your voice is muted. Do you have another recitation as well, or?
Yeah.
No, he was just reciting Salawat.
Okay.
Allahumma salli ala
Ahsan, Jazakallah. Thank you very much, Asad. Allah bless you, and inshallah give you the best of the rewards. So that was Asad Ali, who had started this program with the recitation of the holy word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And now I'll request my brother Perwez and brother Miqdad Huda to inshallah recite Surah Al-Yasin. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشر بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاء المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم قالوا طائركم معكم أن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أتخذ من دونه آلية إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء يوم كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يهديهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون صدق الله العلي العظيم
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها هبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاع إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم يوم أيها المجرمون ألم أهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لتمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نؤمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه شعرا وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقناهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناهم من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. These are our dear brothers, brother Pervez and brother Miqdad Hudda, that had recited the recitation of Surah Al-Yasin. And now I'll request my dear brothers, brother Ilyas Elisi and brother Yusuf Rahman, to commence with the recitation of Dua al-Kumail. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذن لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء يا نور يا قدوس يا نور يا قدوس يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحدق العصم اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقم اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خادع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيها عندك رغبته اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك اللهم لا أجد لذنوب غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته وكم من فاتح من البلاء قلته وكم من عثار وقيته وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته اللهم عظم بلائي وافرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد آمالي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومطال يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك ألا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أهوى وسعته على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك وخالفت بعد أوامرك فلك الحجة علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك وقد آتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شد وثاقي يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي يا من بدا خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغبيتي هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي يا إلهي وسيدي وربي أتراك معذبي بنانك بعد توحيدك وبعد من طوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيته أو تبعد من أدنيته أو تشرد من أهويته أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا، وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا وبشكرك مادحا، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعا، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعا، وشعرت باستغفارك مذعنا. ما هكذا ظنوا بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا رب، يا كريم يا رب، يا كريم يا رب. وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه، قليل مكثوه، يسير بقاؤه، قصير مدته. فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك. وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض يا سيدي، فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستقيم. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها ضج وأبكي، لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته. فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فابني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي، صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك، وابني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إليك إلى كرامتك، أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفوك. فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا، لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآمنين، ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين، يا غاية آمال العارفين. صلى الله. السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا غياث المستغيثين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين، أفتراك سبحان يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وذاق طعم عذابه بمعصيته وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته وهو يضج إليك ضجيج معامل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما السلاف من حلمك أم كيف تولمه النار وهو يعمل فضلك ورحمتك أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوت وترى مكانه أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم طلقه أم كيف تزجر زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا ربه أم كيف يورقه فضلك في إطقه منها فتتركه فيها هيهات مزالك ذنوبك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبح لما عملت به المعاهدين دين من برك وإحسانك فباليقين يقطع لولا ما هكمت به من تعذيب جاهديك وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك لا جعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماءك أقسمته أن تملها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها الواندين وأن تجلى ثناؤك قلت مبتديا وتولت بالإنعام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون إلهي وسيدي فاسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي هتمتها وهكمته وغلبت من عليه أجريته أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أزهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي ما جواره وكنت أنت رقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيته وبفضلك سترته وأن توفر هذه من كل خير أنزلته أو إحسان فزلته أو بر نشرته أو رزق بسطته أو ذنب تغفره أو قطع تستره يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيده ناسيتي يا عالما بذنبي ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وعزم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورة وبخدمتك موصولة وأعمالي إنك مقبولة حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وهالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب قوي على خدمتك جواره واشدد على العزيمة جواره وهب لي الجد جدا في خشيتك ودواما في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أسرها إليك في ميادين السابقين واسري إليك في المبارزين واشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وادنو منك دنو المخلصين وخافك مخافة الموقنين واجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فارد ومن كادني فكد وجعلني من أحسن يبيدك ناسبا عندك وأقربهم منزلة منك وخصهم زلفة لديك فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجلي بجودك واعطف علي بمجدك واحفظني برحمتك واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا وقلبي بحبك مطيما ومن علي بحسن إجابتك وقل أثرتي واغفر زلتي فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وزمنت لهم الإجابة فإليك فإليك يا ربي نسبت وجهي وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني منايا ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى ارحم من وعصوا ماله الرجاء وسلاهه البكاء يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقام يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام يا عالم لا يعلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بما أنت أهله وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم. Alhamdulillah that Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us these opportunities that we are able to uphold these gatherings and the remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, indeed glorifying Him and having the remembrance of the Prophet, his dear beloved Prophet, and his awliya, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, in our gatherings. Today we mark and we remember the wafat of Lady, the mother of loyalty, al-Wafa, who is the mother of Abul Fadl alayhi salam wa alayha salam, the Lady al-Baneen. And we convey our condolences to the Prophet and his blessed progeny and to the Imam of our time, Ajjalallahu Farajul Sharif, and extending these condolences to all lovers of Ahlul Bayt across the globe. Also, as mentioned in the email, we will be dedicating the Thawab of this majlis to Marhoom, that indeed, as we know, Lady al-Baneen alayhi salam had lost her sons in the Battle of Karbala. And as mentioned in the email, we'll be dedicating the Thawab of this majlis. We'll be doing the Thala Thawab to Marhoom Mukhtar Hudda, that indeed the community has lost a son, and conveying the condolences to his dear father, Shaykh Shafiq Hudda, and his mother, Sister Sabra Jafar, and the grandparents, Sultan Uncle and Rosamine, Sister Rosie Auntie, and to his aunt, Sister Arifa, and Shaykh Salim, and his siblings, and to the entire family. Inshallah, to continue with this majlis, I'll request my dear brother Asif Rada to recite a poem in the honor of this noble lady. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Brother Taha, can you hear me?
Yes, alhamdulillah, we can see and hear you well. Alhamdulillah.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. So my poem's topic is, to you, O al-Baneen, we promise. So this is based on the hadith of Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, where he talks about how al-Baneen used to go in Jannatul Baqi and used to lament about the shahadat of Imam Hussein and her sons. And even Marwan ibn al-Hakam, the staunch enemy of the Ahlul Bayt, used to cry at these elegies. So this is based on that hadith. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the graveyard of al-Baqi, there resided a grieving lady, called upon as al-Baneen, the mother of lights, for she mothered sons of great might. She would cry, "Call me such no more, my sons and my lights are no more. My sons were shot and beheaded, cutting through their veins, body shredded. They say they cut al-Abbas's arms and then hit his head hard to disarm. He fell on the ground with no arms, while they attacked him together as a swarm. Your lament shook your enemies. Marwan teared up at your elegies. Your message still reverberates, ripples over centuries it creates. Ali brought you in his house, another Fatima as his spouse, an honor to be the mother of Al-Hasnain, to serve the two Zainabain. You taught your children just to serve this household as a sacrifice in reserve. You taught them what loyalty and honor meant, to have patience and to be content. Abbas's flag still flies high, testament to your prayers reply. Under the dome your lion sleeps, guarding this house as its keep. In the silence of al-Baqi, a voice can be heard. Through its darkness, emotions undeterred. It is for Hussein I would cry. After Abbas, he was left alone to die. our mothers tell their children this tale of your son's valor in detail, and Abbas and Uthman and us to inspire. So no one gives up Hussein for their worldly desire. So no one gives up Hussein for their worldly desire. To you, O al-Baneen, we promise our faith shall remain honest. To our Imam, we will serve. Your message we will preserve. Peace be on the wife of the beloved. Peace be on the mother of the four beloved. Peace on the one who was a loyal companion, the mother who served with true compassion. To you, O al-Baneen, we promise our faith shall remain honest. To our Imam, we will serve. Your message we will preserve. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه. أجركم على Allah. Thank you very much, Brother Asif. May Allah reward you the greatest reward for your beautiful words, and inshallah increase your efforts and your tawfiqat with this regard. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. And inshallah with this I request our respected Shaykh Shafiq Hudda to address this Majlis Aza. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين خالق السماوات والأرض إلها واحدا أحدا صمدا لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين رحمة للعالمين طه وياسين بالقاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين ورحمة الله على محبيهم ولعنة الله على أعدائهم وقاتليهم وغاصب حقوق حقهم ومنكر فضائلهم أجمعين من يومنا هذا إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتبارك في كتابه الحكيم وفرقانه المجيد وقوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. كل نفس ذائقة الموت ثم إلينا ترجعون. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Respected sisters and brothers, my youngsters, my elders, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be upon all of you and your families. We are marking the wafat anniversary of Hazrat Fatima bint Hizam, most famously known as al-Baneen. In some narrations, we also mark the wafat of Hazrat Kulthum. In some places, they're doing that as well. But I wanted to, inshallah, highlight the life of Hazrat al-Baneen briefly. And of course, I appreciate the fact that you've also kept the Eesal Thawab for my son. And I wanted to also take this opportunity to extend my appreciation and my gratitude to the community here in Kitchener-Waterloo. And I understand people from even Edmonton, Calgary, Winnipeg, and Pakistan are with us today. And of course, King Tardan, I don't want to forget, because I heard a tribute that was given by our young dua for Mukhtar when he had passed away. Our sister dua for arranging the recitation of the Holy Quran. I think the amount of tribute that all of you have given, and when I was going to the airport, Sayyid Hashmat dropped me, and we had an interesting heart-to-heart conversation. And of course, I always tell myself as well that we do not put our gham, our azadari, our pain, anything higher than the Ahlul Bayt. We are nothing more than the dust under the feet of Ahlul Bayt alayhi wassalam. And one of the brothers that I want to acknowledge as well, who has also been suffering with his son, may Allah grant a speedy shifa, our brother Rasul Haydari, who, when he called me to give condolences for Mukhtar, I was remembering his own son and the jihad that he has gone through. And may Allah, inshallah, make everybody's battles easy, inshallah. May Allah Ta'ala give everybody shifa who is ill in any way whatsoever, in any disease, whether those diseases are zahiri or whether they are batini. So our gham, our masaib is nothing compared to what we have taken and learned from the Ahlul Bayt. And for all of you, I am deeply, deeply thankful on behalf of my parents and the entire family for all of the love, care, and consideration you've shown, the amount of food that has been given, dropped off at my mother's house, and has been a consolation of phone calls and messages, which we may not have been able to reply all of, yet, but we hope that you will understand, inshallah. It's been a challenging time, but we are not saying that our time is any more challenging than what challenges that many of you have been facing. We are but one drop in the whole bucket of this dunya that we are in. And the example that we get from al-Baneen alayhi salam of sacrifice, of dedication, of perseverance, and of sacrificing one's own pain for the sake of the higher cause that we are here for, has been something that has given strength to many of us. And I know many of you have done the amal of Hazrat al-Baneen, or will dedicate a tasbih of salawat to Hazrat al-Baneen as a gift. These are very effective ways of having our own hajat fulfilled. Recite a tasbih and dedicate that, gift it to Hazrat al-Baneen, and you will see, inshallah, many of the problems and difficulties, inshallah, will be solved. Towards the end of the discussion, I will speak a little bit about some of the efforts that we have been made, that we've been doing, inshallah, for Marhoom Mukhtar, and inshallah for those who are in need. But you see the life of Hazrat al-Baneen, that an exemplary life. When the shahadat of Hazrat Fatima Zahra salamullahi alayha took place, it was at this time Hazrat Amir al-Mu'mineen had asked his brother Aqil to search for a family that was known for its valor, a family that was known for its bravery. Now, before I come to this part, I want to mention one thing. Just a few years, many years earlier than that, at one time when the Prophet had been told about when the Prophet had, the shahadat of Hazrat Jafar at-Tayyar, of course, the brother of Amir al-Mu'mineen, had taken place. And the Prophet had said that Jafar alayhi salam is going to be in the paradise in heaven, and he will have wings instead of arms. He'll be, going around everywhere, because he was shaheed in one of the early battles. At that time, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa asked the Holy Prophet that, can you make dua for me to also be shaheed? I also want to be shaheed. And brothers and sisters, this is a dua, it's an important dua. A lot of times we ask for worldly things. We sometimes get ingrained into this dunya. But we know when we want to ask for something higher than the dunya, this is what Amir al-Mu'mineen taught us. That, Ya Rasulullah, this is something we should ask for, that, Allah Ta'ala gives us shahada. And so Rasulullah told Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says that you will be shaheed in the masjid, not on the battlefield, not on Maidan-e-Jihad. You will be killed in the masjid, but Allah Ta'ala will give you a son who will be an example of bravery, who will be shaheed on the battlefield. Prophet had told Amir al-Mu'mineen that. So since that time, the Imam was waiting and waiting when this will take place. And so upon the shahadat of Hazrat Fatima Zahra salamullahi alayha, the Imam began a quest. He tells his brother Aqil, he says, Aqil, look for a good family, look for a family that is noble, that is known for its bravery, for its chivalry. And I want to find somebody from that family that I can marry. Now, one thing I want to ask all of you sisters and brothers, mashallah, you know the life of Amir al-Mu'mineen, you know the knowledge of Amir al-Mu'mineen, you know the vision of Imam. If you remember in one of the battles, if I'm not mistaken, it was the Battle of Badr, and a number of the kuffar were killed by Amir al-Mu'mineen. And so one of those who were one of the early Muslims who was in that battle, he went to Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, yes, you killed 36 people in this battle, but I also killed X number, very close to this number that Amir al-Mu'mineen had reached. He says, I've also killed that. So he was basically trying to say that I've done something as well. Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam replies to him. He tells him, he says that when you killed the enemy came in front of you and you killed him, you sent him to Jahannam. Yes, of course, you did a great job. He says, but when an enemy came before me, I was making sure that I looked at his lineage from today till Yawm al-Qiyamah and make sure there is no moment in that line, and then I sent him to Jahannam. La ilaha illallah. Imam had the knowledge to see who will be in that lineage, who will be in that family, until they make sure there's no moments, and then I kill him. So those 36 were not just killed like that. They were the Imam says that I made sure the lineage was there. So the question arises that why would Imam Ali alayhi salam tell Aqil to look for somebody for him? Why? He himself could have looked. If anybody was approached by Ali ibn Abi Talib with a proposal for their daughter, who would say no? Who would say no to Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, the Wasi of Rasulullah, the Imam al-Muttaqeen, the Amir al-Mu'mineen, the one who was the closest to their Holy Prophet of Islam? Who would say no? Some writers, and one of my teachers actually once explained to me, he says, perhaps Imam Ali alayhi salam told Aqil to look for somebody so that Aqil himself would want or would have this desire that I also want somebody brave who will represent me on the plains of Karbala. And so he had Muslim, Aqil had Muslim, and Imam Ali had Abbas. Allahu Akbar. And when he marries al-Baneen, Fatima bint Hizam, some have written Fatima bint Hazm, and he marries from this well-known tribe. When she enters the house of Imam Ali alayhi salam, she makes one thing known to Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam, one thing very clear to Zainab bin Kulthum. She says that I have entered your family not as your mother, not as your stepmother. I have entered your family as your servant. Allahu Akbar. And history narrates that as the wife of Imam Ali alayhi salam, she would look after Imam Ali's other wife's kids, yani Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, Zainab bin Kulthum, better than she would look after her own children, including Abbas, including Abdullah, including Ja'far and Uthman. These were the 4 sons of hers who were killed on the plains of Karbala. Some have written that she also had another son, Musa, who was killed on the plains of Karbala. Some say it was just 4. Some have written 5, Musa ibn Ali. Okay, so she made that clear right away. So you can see, imagine what a heart it takes. Kaisa jigar hai, that she was looking after her other wife, Imam Ali's other wives better than her own. And this remained throughout her life. And so it was narrated that, she was known for her piety, she was known for her goodness, and the family, including herself, was known for her bravery. And her bravery, I'll just talk about in a few minutes. So, she nurtured them when her children, all 4 of them were born. And she nurtured them and she made sure she inculcated in them values of serving the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And that is why some biographers have written that, the 4 holy ladies of Jannah, Hazrat Maryam, Hazrat Asiya, Hazrat Khadija Tahira, and Hazrat Fatima Zahra, salamullahi alayhima, peace be upon all of them, inshallah. All of these noble ladies of Jannah were there as the prime examples. But then you've got people like Hazrat al-Baneen, who was very close to that status. He was not at that status, but very close to it. And you can see that in her life, there was never any complaint that Amirul Mu'mineen said that this was something wrong, this was something uncomfortable that the Imam was. So you can just see that her values, her nobility, her subservience to the Ahlul Bayt, and her love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the family of Rasulullah was unparalleled. Unparalleled. And so these values happen, from a childhood. And you have to remember that the values that are taught to a child from the beginning, those values remain, my dear sisters and brothers. Those values become very, very important because they are the ones that develop the child. There's always a discussion and a debate going on in the academia and in the sociological circles that what makes a person what they are. What makes an individual there? Is it their environment or is it their nature? Some people are inherently good. Some people are inherently bad. Some people develop these qualities of good and bad. Okay. But one thing that all sociologists will be, you can say united on and unanimous on, is the fact that the environment that you grow up in plays a very important role in what you or who you become. And that environment, a lot of times we see, rests on the shoulders of the mother. The mother's responsibility becomes much more critical and important. And that's why even in English they say that the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. Huh? The hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. And you can see examples of it, countless examples. If you look at the, Yazid alayhi la'an son Muawiyah, the son Muawiyah, the good Muawiyah, you see that he left the throne. He abdicated. He says, I don't want to sit on the throne from which the order of the killing of Hussein ibn Ali took place. He rejected it. Why? Because his mother was a pious, a good lady, and she trained him. She inculcated values of the love of Ali Muhammad alayhi salam and of goodness, good versus evil in him. On the flip side, you see Hazrat Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam, one of the ulul azam prophets, one of the great prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His own son decided not to come aboard the Safinat al-Nuh, on the ark, and along with his mother, he was drowned. The mother had inculcated those values in him, and the values of rejection and not obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and going toward worldly pleasures and worldly. So a significant amount of that training becomes relevant and important at a later stage. And so Hazrat al-Baneen alayhi salam made sure that she brought her boys up in the service of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, in the service of Amir al-Mu'mineen when Imam was alive. And her age was not that old, and she was known to have been born in the 5th year of Hijrah, and her wafat took place approximately, some say 65 years of Hijrah, some say 64 Hijrah. So approximately 60 years of age she was. So you can see that shortly after the events of Karbala, she had also left this mortal world. And so and she was not only known for her piety and her chivalry, bravery, her family, but she was also a very, very important, a well-recognized poet as well. As Sayyid Asif mentioned in the poetry, that even it is narrated that Marwan al-Mal'un, the accursed Marwan, who used to go by Jannat al-Baqi and would listen to her lamentations and her poetry, because she was a poetess. And her poetry was such that even the enemies would sometimes have tears in their eyes, and they would cry after they're listening to this poetry. And a lot of times the poetry was recited by al-Baneen alayhi salam. And so you can see and appreciate that she used her skills, her training, her imparting of knowledge and love to the children. She used all that for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a challenge that our sisters and our mothers can read about and learn greatly from. That she spent that time with what we say quality time. So we now, alhamdulillah, with this pandemic and everything is online, and we see people having quantity, lots and lots of time, but the quality time is extremely important. Quality times means you give your child undivided attention. You make sure you spend time and know what they're doing, what they're up to, and make sure that inshallah those values get transferred on. And sometimes you have to sit down with that wholehearted time, leaving the phone and the laptop and the iPads and everything behind, and having that conversation, reminding our children of what is the love of Ahlul Bayt. And it was narrated that after the events of Karbala, after the martyrdom of Imam Hussein ibn Ali والسلام, the initial majalis, the majlises, were held at her house, because some say, Salma also had them. Those writers who say that Salma may not have been there, they would actually gather at the house of al-Baneen alayhi salam, and she would recite the poetry and narrate whatever happened. And when the caravan of Abu Abdullah alayhi salam returned back to Medina, even then she would be the host of them, because obviously It was a very traumatic time for the Ahlul Bayt, for Hazrat Zainab and Kulthum, for Hazrat Zain al-Abidin alayhim salatu wasalam, peace be upon them all. So Hazrat al-Baneen would actually keep these majalis and host the guests and recite the poetry and the recitation. So al-Baneen's life was a very exemplary life, and she would recite this poetry, and the people there would be known to cry at the remembrance of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. So this is the earliest known, of course, when the majalis was taking place in Sham, just after Yazid al-Maluhan had released them. The majalis there were basically Hazrat Zainab, narrating to the ladies what had transpired, Hazrat Imam Zain al-Abidin telling the men. But in the majlis took a slightly different form in the time of al-Baneen in Medina, whereby what we would call Nawha and Marthia actually was recited by members of the family who were of the Ahlul Bayt. In the time of Imam Ali ibn Musa Rada alayhi salatu wasalam, this became a little more structured, and there was Marthia recitation, there was this Latmiya or the Nawha recitation following the majlis, so both before the majlis and after. But one of the earliest times we've got in record was this time of Hazrat al-Baneen. So we see, as I mentioned, 4 of her sons were martyred on the plains of Karbala: Hazrat Abbas, Hazrat Abdullah, Hazrat Uthman, and Hazrat Ja'far. And after the events of Karbala, many people were asking, well, why was she known as al-Baneen as opposed to Fatima? One of the, again, interesting things of her own sacrifice when she entered the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen, when she entered the life of Imam Ali, you can imagine any new bride would have dreams, would have visions, would want to do this, would want to do that, would want to hold, have a walima, would want to have, this gathering. Hazrat al-Baneen, whose name of course was Fatima, entered the house and told the people around her, including the family members, do not call me Fatima. I don't want the members of the family to remember their mother Fatima. I don't want the people in the household to remember the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So call me al-Baneen, the mother of sons. And that was how she entered the house. So she suppressed, she sacrificed all her dreams, all whatever a new bride would want, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for the future that will eventually befall her. And so that was one of the reasons why the people came and they would give her condolences after the shahadat of Abu Abdullah alayhi salam. And what I wanted to mention, as I had said, that just before I come back to the masayib of Hazrat al-Baneen and her son, I wanted to just say that, it's been 1 week today since I had buried my son in Leicester in England. And once again, I extend my gratitude to all of you. And I was mentioning even to my dear brother Rasul Haydari, that may Allah give him and his family also great strength. For it is not easy to have a challenge with a child, with a son who is going through the difficulties that they are. Inshallah, may Allah give shifa to all. But one of the things that our community needs to look at much more seriously and much more importantly is what mental health is and some of the signs. I don't have the time today to go into detail. And all of you are aware that have been some funds both in England and here in Canada that have been set up in the name of Mukhtar, but I don't want this to be a matter of just Mukhtar. This is a matter of our community's children. There are many, many Mukhtars. There are many, many children. And our daughters, our sisters, and many things came to light after my son's passing, which opened also my eyes to understand that many people feel that these things are not to be talked about. Mental illnesses should be swept under the feet. There's a stigma. There's a stigma, and even sometimes ulama have not understood this. That when somebody has a mental problem, one of the early examples or one of the early responses of many scholars I've heard is, oh, maybe the iman is weak, or maybe they don't have taqwa, or maybe this is a problem. And oftentimes, one of the reasons why there is a stigma is that the blame is put back on the family members or on the person himself or herself who has got the problem. So people are embarrassed to come out, they're humiliated, they have got shyness that I have a mental illness. And my dear sisters and brothers, this needs to stop. This must stop, inshallah. If you know somebody who sometimes has mood changes, or they act differently than their norm, there might be something weird happening, or if you are feeling some of these symptoms, and mashallah on the internet there's lots of signs, there are many of nishanis that can be read about and inshallah appreciated. If you know somebody's going through that, answer them, go to them, talk to them, and see if there needs to be help. And I think one of the things that we also need to do as a community, and it's not even been happening to the extent that I would like it in the normal society, but I also want the community to understand and be advocates for the government to fund this disease, if you want to call it that. It is an illness, it is a disease. People say cancer is a disease, corona is a disease, this is a disease, that is a disease. Well, mental illness is also a disease. Another friend of mine who had a similar challenge, a mental illness, Marhoom, he also passed away last year, Marhoom Mehdi Paride. He used to tell me, he says, Sheikh Shafiq, please pray that even my enemy, I pray that even my enemy does not get mental illness. Some days would be very good, some days would be bad, some days would be nice, some days would be down. And this is something, if you see that, see what you can offer. My dear sisters and brothers, supporting the cause doesn't mean that you make a donation to this mental illness fund or this foundation or that foundation. Giving charity doesn't necessarily mean you give your money. If you give your time, if you know somebody is suffering and you go to them and you say salam to them, you make them happy, believe me, you will get the same thawab of sadaqah. You will get the same fadail of sadaqah, giving sadaqah fi sabilillah, because you've brought somebody happiness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need your dollars or your euros or your pounds or your yen or your gold bars. Allah ta'ala wants you to help each other. Help each other. And even making somebody happy, I'm sure Allah Ta'ala will give you a great ajr, will give you a great thing, because our community has had this hiding for years. And sometimes when I've come across the cases that have come after Mukhtar's passing, in just one short week, in just 1 week, a week and a half since his demise, and when we had let the community know, and despite the fact that people told us, don't say this, don't say, how can Sheikh Shafiq's son have committed suicide? And something, none of us are immune to it. None of us are masoom. We are all in this world for a test. And one thing I wanted to share with you all, oftentimes when we are talking about imtihan or test, remember one thing. Every one of us has an imtihan, not the same imtihan, not necessarily the same imtihan or test. Sometimes our test is how we deal with those who are lower than us, or perhaps more ill than us, who are more sick than us, who are lower on the financial or economic or elite or social status than us. Maybe that is our test. Sometimes our test is through the loss of a child or the illness of a child. Sometimes our test is in the loss of a job. Sometimes our test is in getting a job, getting a promotion. Imtihan doesn't mean negative, my sisters and brothers. Imtihan means anything that tests us. Okay, so if you get a job at work, and you get a promotion, you get a raise, or you get a new position, and you're now the supervisor, you're now the department head, that is also an imtihan. It's a test. Now, how are you going to act? Now that you're the boss of somebody you were working with yesterday, are you going to be arrogant and have your pride and walk around like this, like an elevated person? Or are you going to remain and maintain your humbleness? Imtihan comes to everybody, but the imtihan comes in different ways. So one of the imtihan is that how we deal with people who are ill. Do we look after them? Do we shun them? Do we ignore them? Do we make ourselves so busy that we don't have time for them? Yes, I understand. We all live in a busy world. We're all living in a very, very busy world, my dear sisters and brothers. I used to think I'm busy, and now I realize today that in this whole week, the world had come to an end for me. I don't remember any news story in this entire week. I only thought of what was happening. And even then, there is a blank. I was telling my mother this afternoon, I said, so there are certain parts of the funeral and the mayyat and the ghusl that I just have a blank. I don't remember. What happened? The world for me came to an end, but the sun still rose in the east and the sun still set in the west. Every movement carried on. Everything happened the way it did. The day came, the day went, the month came, the month went, the week came, the week went. Nothing stopped. None of us are indispensable. So let us remember our Allah, help humanity as best as we can, help the insan as best as we can. And I mentioned this one on the night that I had buried Mukhtar, and I just wanted to remind, if any of you were not there, I'm just going to reiterate one thing, that we need to stop becoming judgmental. We have a tendency to think that that person is Jahannami, that person is Jahannami. We think we are the only ones going to heaven. We think, and over the years, and I'm talking about over these last 15 years that I have been going to public schools, Catholic schools, high schools, universities, colleges. And oftentimes I get asked a question. And this is a question I'm sure many of us have thought about and have been asked. And the question is that you Muslims believe that only Muslims will go into Jannah. You believe that all of us will go into hell. All of us, non-Muslims, non-believers, all of us Christians and Jews will all go into Jahannam. And my answer, my sisters and brothers, in these years and decades that I have been speaking at public schools, my answer has always been the same. And the answer is, I'm not sure where I am going. How can I send somebody else to Jahannam? La ilaha illallah. I don't know where, of course, Allah has given us the guidelines. Inna hadaynahu sabila, imma shakirun wa imma kafura. We have shown you the guidance. Do you follow? You don't follow? We know that. We know we have the criteria. We have the criteria. But how do I know that I'm following the criteria properly? How do I know I'm following properly? There's been a famous narration of the Holy Prophet. And the Prophet narrated that on the day of Qiyamah, there'll be certain groups of people, certain rich people, certain ulama, certain shuhada, martyrs. They will be told not to go to Jannah, and they'll be sent to the other place. And that alim will come and say, Ya Allah, I wrote books, I recited majlises, I did this, I did that, I had a turban and everything. Allah said, Jahannam, tell the angels, take him. We said, why? He says, you did that because so that people say, oh, mashallah, what a Maulana, what a great Maulana, what a great alim, oh, mashallah, his majlises were so excellent, his books were so good. You didn't do it for the sake of Allah. Get in there. The shuhada, they will be saying, Ya Allah, I gave my life. That's the ultimate. He says, yes, you did it because you wanted your family reputation to be high. You wanted people to remember you. You wanted this and that. And, therefore, you will also go in there. Why? Because you didn't do it for the sake of Allah. The rich people, they will be sent there. They say, well, Ya Allah, we gave our money, our hard-earned money. We spent it. We gave our homes, our zakat. We gave charity. We built this masjid, this Hussainiya, that Hussainiya. Allah will say, go there. Why? Because you did it so that people say, oh, mashallah, what a good philanthropist. What a good philanthropist. He gave so much money. They must do, you didn't do it for the sake of Allah. So that's where we have to look at ourselves. I have to look at myself. Did I do it for the sake of Allah? Did I do everything I have done for the sake of Allah? Because if I have, then yes, I may be entitled to Jannah. But if I haven't, then coming back to what I tell those students, I'm not sure where I'm going. I'm not sure if my intentions were khalisatan fi sabilillah, entirely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the time of Bahlul, a man was overseeing the building of a masjid, beautiful masjid, nice, masjid. And Bahlul asks him, oh, why are you building this masjid? He says, I'm building it for the sake of Allah. I'm building it for the sake of Allah. That man replied, that rich man. So in the middle of the night, after they've gone, in the middle of the night, Bahlul takes a big marker, one of those markers, you've seen them, right? Big marker, he writes Masjid Bahlul. The next day, he is not far from that area. This man comes and he is fuming mad. He's angry. And when Bahlul comes around that area, he gets angry at Bahlul. He's scolding Bahlul. How dare you? How dare you? What have you done? What have you done? Bahlul says, why? He says, you put Masjid Bahlul. I'm the one who built the masjid. He says, yesterday I was asking you, why did you build the masjid? You told me you built it for the sake of? For the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I hope you're listening, right? So Bahlul tells him, if you built it for the sake of Allah, and I write Masjid Bahlul, Allah knows that you built the masjid and all that. Allah will not be fooled by a sign. Allah will not be fooled by it. But if you're doing it for the people, then that sign will bother you. You see? Let us keep our actions for the sake of Allah. I have taken a lot of your time. May Allah bless you, inshallah. And I want to thank the organizers and especially Brother Sayyid Hashmat for giving me this opportunity, which I had requested. I said that I need to, inshallah, give this tribute. A thanks for the community, to all of you, for everything that all of you have done. And I wanted to take this moment to also give a little bit of a khudafiz in this community where Mukhtar had grown up and had spent most of his life. I was born and spent most of his life in. And just to appreciate the Mu'mineen. It has been a very, very challenging week and a half. And I'm not going to deny it or doubt it. But how we get solace from the example of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. I had once told the Mu'mineen that my son Mukhtar had a special love for Hazrat Abbas when it was at his his nikah milad just 5 or 6 months ago. And my khalas who were there will remember this, my family members and friends who were there will remember this, that I had done the milad right here from the same place that I'm doing this milad now. 5 months ago, I was doing his nikah milad majlis. 5 months later, I am giving a tribute after his death. The feeling is uncomprehensible even to me. But he had that love for Hazrat Abbas because he told me, he said, Papa, please recite about Hazrat Abbas. And today I'm thinking that al-Baneen's wafat, we are remembering. What better time to remember Hazrat Abbas than here? When the caravan of Abu Abdullah had left Medina, had left Sham, and they had come back to Karbala, they wanted to do a ziyarat of Karbala. And they wanted to do the ziyarat in Karbala of Abu Abdullah. And all of the ladies finished the ziyarat of Hazrat Abu Abdullah. They did the ziyarat of Ganj Shuhada. They did the ziyarat of Qasim and Hazrat Muhammad and Ali Akbar and Hazrat Ali Asghar. They had done all of the ziyarat. And then Hazrat Zainab says, now we must go towards the Furat and we must say Khudafiz to Hazrat Abbas. We must go bid him farewell as well. We must go say salam to him because we have just come back from Sham. As they were going, Hazrat Zainab stops them. Hazrat Zainab stops them and she addresses the ladies of the caravan. She goes, we are going to my brother Abbas. We are going to go say salam to him and do his ziyarat. When we say salam to him, oh ladies who are here, please don't tell him that Sakina has been martyred on the plains of Karbala. We don't want the grave of Abbas Alamdar to start shaking because of that love he had for Sakina. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. Oh Allah, accept this ibadat from us. Ya Allah, grant the thawab of this majlis to all the marhumeen, including Marhoom Mukhtar, all of the marhumeen and our friends and our family. Ya Allah, grant them maghfirat, Ya Allah. When we leave when we leave this world, Ya Allah, protect us from the difficulties of Maut, the difficulties in the Qabr, the difficulties on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Ya Allah, all those who are ill, grant them shifa kamila from their illnesses, Ya Allah, whether those illnesses are dhahiri illnesses or whether those illnesses are batini illnesses, whether they can be seen, Ya Allah, or those illnesses are inside that cannot be seen but only felt. Grant them shifa kamila, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, we ask you to protect our elders. Ya Allah, protect our families, our children, keep them on the straight path, the path of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Ya Allah, protect our community from whatever diseases and illnesses, whether it's the pandemic or anything else. Ya Allah, protect our communities, protect the mu'mineen, protect all of them, Ya Allah. We ask you, Ya Allah, hasten the return of Imam al-Hudda, Imam al-Qayyim. Let us be amongst the ashab and the ansar of the Imam. Let us see Zamani's Zuhur with our own eyes, Ya Allah. And protect our ulama, the maraja, the mujtahideen who are serving while the Imam is in occultation. Grant them a long and healthy life in the service of Islam and the Ahlul Bayt. If I can say a tahad, please take your permission to ask the mu'mineen to recite Amma Yajibu for all those who are ill, for Allah Ta'ala to give them shifa from this pandemic and from whatever illnesses whether they have, whether they're spiritual illnesses, physical illnesses, or zahiri or batini illnesses. For our hajat to be accepted, for the hifazat of Imam Sahib al-Amr, and for the safety and the security of the mu'mineen who are suffering in Pakistan, especially the Hazaras, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Kashmir, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Palestine, in Iran under the sanctions, in Nigeria, in Yemen, in Bahrain, in so many places in the world that there is suffering, in Venezuela, in Cuba. If we can join together all and recite 5 times Amazing. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. All together, please. Amma yujibul multarra idha da'a wa yakshifu su. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب
إذا دعا ويكشف
Allahumma salli ala Allahumma shfi kulli marid. One Surah Fatiha followed by 3 times Surah Tawheed for all the marhumin in our family, our friends, in our community. Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم. جزاكم الله خير. May Allah bless you all. May Allah protect you and your families. Assalamu alaikum جميعا.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وأعظم الله أجوركم شيخنا إن شاء الله. We pray that Allah bestows you with patience, that indeed is a great loss, and to all the family members. Inshallah, brothers and sisters, we will conclude this majlis with the recitation of Ziyarat al-Waratha by our respected Dr. Muhammad al-Baneen. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Thank you very much, dear brother Sayyid Taha. Before I recite Ziyarah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
This is Muhammad Alwan, your brother from Saskatchewan.
We have missed you many times. I remember you very fondly, Dr. Muhammad Saad.
Jazakallah khair. Jazakallah khair. So I offer the entire community my sincere condolences, especially to Uncle Sultan and to you, dear Sheikh Shafiq, to my brother, to your families, and to Sheikh Saeed and his families. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him a place with Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad, inshallah. Wa inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un.
Jazakallah khair. Please remember our dear brother Rasul Haydari and his family in your du'as as well. He has suffered immensely also.
نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يستجيب الدعاء إن شاء الله.
الله آمين الله آمين. جزاك الله خير.
بارك الله فيك. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله. السلام عليك يا وارث نوح نبي الله. السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله. السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله. السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله. السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا وارث أمير المؤمنين ولي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى. السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثار والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلت ولعن الله أمة ظلمت ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة. لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من وأركان المؤمنين. وأشهد المهدي، وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا، وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله إني بكم مؤمن وبإيابكم موقن، بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي، وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. زيارة علي بن الحسين عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلت، ولعن الله أمة ظلمت، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. زيارة شهداء كربلاء. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأحبائه، السلام عليكم يا أصفياء الله وأودائه، السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الزكي الناصح، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله، بأبي أنتم وأمي طبتم وطابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما، فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. زيارة العباس. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس ابن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الوصيين، السلام عليك يا ابن أول القوم إسلاما وأقدمهم إيمانا وأقومهم بدين الله وأحوطهم على الإسلام. أشهد لقد نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك، فنعم الأخ المواسي، فلعن الله أمة قتلت، ولعن الله أمة ظلمت، ولعن الله أمة استحلت منك المحارم وانتهكت حرمة الإسلام، فنعم الصابر المجاهد المحامي الناصر والأخ الدافع عن أخيه المجيب إلى طاعة ربه الراغب فيما زهد فيه غيره من الثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل، والحقك الله بدرجة آبائك في جنات النعيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. الفاتحة.
بسم الله. Thank you very much, Dr. Muhammad. May Allah bless you and keep you protected. And inshallah, we convey, as we said, we pray that Allah keeps everyone protected and in His special mercy. With this, brothers and sisters, we will conclude tonight's program, and we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah accept these acts of worship. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Jazakumullah khair.
Yeah.